Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's service. Before we begin, just a quick announcement. I'll be doing some of the Bible school lectures later in this week. I was a little bit man down during this week with bad flu, but thank God, here we are this morning and ready to share this message with you. So, as you could see this morning, the Christian Survival Kit. Really, folks, something so practical and so important that you can literally not survive as a Christian without it. Something that we need to acknowledge that the Bible makes very clear is the following as we read out of Hebrews 10:38. But the just shall live by faith. And we see that faith is a further zeal for the things of God, a further born of faith, and conjoined with it, as the Amplified states, and if he draws back and shrinks in fear, my soul has no delight or pleasure in him. So we want to look at the Christian survival kit, and the Bible in the same breath makes it quite clear that some can and will inevitably withdraw and draw back in the faith and shrink in fear. But our way is not that of those who draw back to eternal misery and are utterly destroyed, but we are of those who believe, who cleave to and trust and rely on God through Jesus Christ, and by faith preserve the soul. In other words, there's something of a persistence, a consistency, and an insistence that causes those who are preserved and persevere to maintain their walk with the Lord right until the end. And that's what we want to look at. It should become apparent to you that the Bible shows that Christians depart from the faith, they become weak, they become overwhelmed, and we find a number of words that describe this condition. So, number one, the Bible talks about falling away, literally defection, rebellion, or abandonment, as we see in 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 3. So falling away is the one. The next one is drifting away. So the one seems almost a deliberate rebellion, turning against. The other one is drifting away, slipping past like a boat not anchored. Sure, that one we're going to have a look at. To drift away because there's no anchor, there's no solid, firm foundation. Then there's a turning back, meaning you walked after the Lord and you turned back. Like the Israelites wanted to turn back to Egypt. That's a shrinking back or a withdrawal that we saw just now in Hebrews 10:38. So there's a withdrawal or a turning back to a previous way of living. And then there's a one called departing from the faith. That's deserting the faith or withdrawing. So, folks, what are we saying? We are looking at the Christian survival kit. The Bible makes it very clear that there are certain possibilities that presents itself in the Christian life that would cause him to turn back, depart from the faith, give up, give in. And we want to see how our Christian lives are supposed to be preserved. How is it that you get some who excel, some who grow in the face of opposition, and others who crumble, withdraw, and fall back? Is the one better than the other? Or are there certain fundamental principles practiced by the one and not the other? And that's what we want to have a look at this morning. So, let's look at it. Every generation literally asks, how are we going to survive in this present evil age? Now, this is obviously a question that was asked from the beginning. We look. This verse is actually found in the book of Galatians, chapter 1, verse 4. What does it mean? And how do we overcome this present evil age? Now, folks, for all of you who are listening to this message this morning, I can't reiterate to you how important this is. Yes, we can talk some really very solid doctrines. We can talk about a lot of things. But if you don't have this survival kit in place, you won't survive. And it's not mine, it's in the Bible. And that's what we're going to look at. So I can't reiterate to you how important this is. And how it will help you in your Christian walk. So every generation asks, how are we going to survive this present evil age? And when we look at this time that you and I are living in, our moments combine fleshly trials, that's lust and pride, and one of my personal favorite topics, acedia, which is the sloth of the soul, with novel accelerants. Now, what would that be? Well, we're living in a modern age, technology, entertainment, and it's called algorithmic persuasion. How do you like that word? Algorithmic persuasion. These are the accelerants that basically present us with alternatives to relationship with the Lord, a metaverse, a virtual reality that takes us away from the reality of God. Then we have financialized time, lots of pressure, and we have all the outrages that we find in the world. So it becomes extremely difficult in the light of all these streams of thoughts and ideas and philosophies and interests and demands on your time to actually maintain a spiritual life and to grow in the Spirit and to make a difference for the kingdom. It seems like most Christians are so paralyzed and pacified by the overwhelming presence of evil and darkness in the world that they have abandoned the post. They have jumped ship. And yet, still in the face of all of this, you get some that are filled with the righteous anger of the Lord, and they pressing forward with the things of the kingdom. How do they do it? Well, let's just look at the problem of this present evil age before we look at the principles. So the meaning of age is very important here, and it's a question that all Christians ask. Let's look at it. It's aeon. In biblical thought, is more than just time. It describes a world order, a mindset, or a system of existence. There we have it. It's exactly where we are. We live in a digital age, a very complex system, virtual reality, algorithmic persuasions that speaks to how you should think and live your life, which values you should have and shouldn't have. And I guarantee you they're all against the principles of the kingdom. Now, Paul describes two ages, this present age and the future age. But here's the thing. This age, or this present fallen world, is marked by sin, idolatry, and all the other things that you and I are so very familiar with that appeals to the flesh. And the word that he uses there, evil, this present evil age, basically refers to the Greek word poneros, which is an emphasis that this age is not neutral. It actively opposes God's purposes. So in other words, folks, you and I can't just exist here minding our own business, just being another unconcerned sheep. It's like walking up an escalator that's coming down. If you can't stand still, it's going to push you back. We are constantly against the stream of the spirit of this world, this present evil age, which is not neutral, which is constantly pushing people back into all kinds of self-gratification and all kinds of self-pleasure against the purposes of the kingdom, so that they become stagnant and blind. Now, I think what is important that you and I need to grasp before we dig into this survival kit is, by calling it present, Paul implies an eschatological tension. So it's a present evil age, but we find something interesting. Christ's death and resurrection inaugurated the new age and the new kingdom. So the kingdom's within us. So we live in this world, but we're not of this world, and we have the kingdom of God within us, but believers still live within the overlap, already belonging to a coming kingdom, but still surrounded by the corruption of this world. And so, whether you like it or not, folks, this world is diametrically opposed to the kingdom within. And how do we survive? So when I say the Christian survival kit, I really mean it, because without the application of these principles, the pushback that you get from the world, the flesh, and the enemy is going to overwhelm you to such an extent that your Christianity becomes a mere memory of a single event. And that's not the purpose of God. The modern world is not just hostile to faith, but it's uniquely efficient at dissipating attention. So it draws us away from where our focus should be. And disciplining desire towards other loves. So you get into a rut, into a groove of having changed priorities, of not having God first, not having your first love nourished, and you get into that groove, and there you sit. And that's what the world is an expert at. As you see, in the end of the day, folks, the spirit of a man will carry him in a day of affliction. And that spirit of a man needs to be in constant communion with the source of life. But if you preoccupy the man and get him into a groove, in a grinding mill, what's going to happen? In a day of affliction, there will be no power. There will be nothing to sustain him, and there will be nothing through which the kingdom can come in this world. Okay. So modern believers describe their inner lives as scattered, shallow, and storm-tossed. Haven't we heard this? You know, folks, one of the things I've heard so many times is people are tired, Christians are weary, they need encouragement. Well, I'll tell you, there's a bigger fundamental flaw why they constantly need somebody to live their spiritual lives for them. And this is what you and I need to seriously think about. So believers describe their lives in this manner. So, the response is, normally, give them encouragement. However, the response is not more external input and more encouragement. It's like you go to the church to get there at your momentum event to be wound up by somebody else because they somehow living spiritually and you're not. You need to get wound up and then get pushed down the road for the next week, and then somewhere along the week your wheels are going to come off and somebody needs to wind you up again. Don't you see that's like being on spiritual life support? So further response cannot be moralism, to try harder. No, you need more encouragement. No, you know what? You need more input. Or, you just need to try harder. Are these the answers to this question? What is the problem? Let me use an example of this state. You get a man who comes to the doctor, very unhealthy. He's got high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high everything. Everything is on a high except him. Okay? And then he says to the doctor, listen, docie, I need you to give me a prescription to bring all these things down. As if his condition can be ascribed to the lack of medication. Truth of the matter is, giving him a chill pill is not the remedy. It doesn't speak to the core of the problem. He needs to get a proper diet. He needs to get some training. He maybe needs to lose some weight. But he doesn't want to do those things. He wants a pill to deal with the symptoms. And so many Christians are exactly the same. I want to go to the church where somebody who is actually walking with the Lord can give me a chill pill, give me some encouragement, carry my burden for me, take my spiritual responsibility for me, and deal with my symptoms because I lack fundamentally the disciplines of a Christian. You see, folks, it is said, there's an old proverb that you give somebody a fish, you make them dependent on you. You teach them to fish, you make them independent. They can stand on their own. It's almost the same principle. What we sit with is the absence of the practice of the Christian disciplines by which they're not just supposed to survive, but to thrive. The church has become a place where you need to deal with symptoms. I want to go there so I can feel good, because in the week I'm going to fall apart. I'm going to go there so that somebody else who is taking responsibility and who is walking with the Lord in a disciplined manner can basically give me something to eat. That's why the church has become a monologue. You've got one talking head and the rest are passive. Because at least the one talking head understands, listen, I've got to be with the Lord. I can't stand before people before I don't stand before the Lord first. But is he the only one supposed to do that? Or is the church supposed to be a corporate cooperation and participation where everybody's been with the Lord? See, big difference. So the response is none of this. What is the response to how should we live in this present evil age? Well, something that we don't like, it's that nasty old word called discipline. It's the one word we love to talk about and the one word we don't love to do much about. Okay? So the response to all of this crisis is training of a faithful follower. Do you know what a disciple is? It's a disciplined follower. A disciplined follower. So the Christian survival kit is the practice of certain spiritual disciplines, not as a religious form, but to maintain life, to preserve life and maintain life, not to acquire life, but to preserve it. But it's one thing we don't like to hear. Because for most people, the ultimate sacrifice and discipline is to actually wrestle themselves out of bed to attend a service which must not be longer than 1 hour, and that is their spiritual duty towards the Lord. What did they do? Well, you see, Christ rose from the dead, but they can't even get out of bed. And that's unfortunately how it is. It's just too much. The pinnacle of their discipline is to basically listen and be passive and not do. And not practice zealously a spiritual life daily according to the disciplines that the Lord has installed. So, habituated participation in the disciplines that the Lord has given, by which the Spirit empowers the inner man and conforms us to Christ. You see, folks, what I'm showing you? It's my example of the doctor. Doctor, I've got high this, high that. Can you give me a pill? Now, I'll tell you, I'll do you a bigger favor. And now I had a very good specialist friend, pulmonologist, unfortunately passed away. But for years, I would go to him as a friend and he would say, Louis, I'm so frustrated. I hate this medical world because I'm just dealing with symptoms. And I'll never forget, I didn't go to his practice for a while, and then one day I went there, and here was the doctor with health advice, with food advice, with all kinds of healthy stuff in his practice. And I'm thinking, hey man, the man got saved, must be true. Because what did he do? He stopped dealing with the symptoms. He started telling people the truth they didn't want to hear. So It's exactly that. People come to the church as if they're going to get a quick fix for a condition that they need to take responsibility for. Okay? So let me talk about these disciplines as the survival kit, and we're going to look at it. I'm not going to discuss all the disciplines in detail today. There's just too much to say about the benefits. Okay? So I want to get your appetite whet on what this does for you spiritually. And then, by God's grace, you will pursue it. So the Christian disciplines is presented as a survival kit. So that's what I sort of baited you, okay? Not to bunker the Christian in against the world. You sit in your little corner. No, 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 no. This is to maintain the life that God has given, and then to capacitate his presence in this world. Because if you practice these things in a disciplined manner, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get the flesh subdued and the spirit fed, and you can actually start to bear fruit in the face of adversity. So disciplines are what? They are relational principles through which the Spirit habituates the church into living, moving, and having their being in God. You see, folks, when I come out of the world, I don't necessarily have all these principles in place. And as part of my transformation, I need to have certain principles put in place to change me, to discipline me. They are called the Christian disciplines, and we're going to have a look at that word just now. What does it mean? It corrects ways of thinking. It corrects conduct. It changes me into the image and likeness of Christ. It maintains the presence of God. It confronts me with stuff that still needs to be dealt with. Now, without that, your Christianity remains a theory in your head. And guess what? You're not going to go through the pearly gates by writing an exam on what you know. It's not the truth you know, that the truth you are that counts. Okay? So these are relational principles that brings us to a place where we finally function as the Bible intended, to live and move and have our being in Him. Further, they are neither meritorious works. I don't do these things to gain acceptance or righteousness. Please, let's establish this very well. Why do Christians do certain things? To gain a state of righteousness? No. We don't do to get saved. We do because we are saved. Okay? And I can guarantee you that the just and the faith of the just should be evident by what they do. They don't do to get righteous, but because they're righteous, they definitely will show certain fruits and principles in their lives. Now, these are not meritorious works, nor private technologies for self-optimization. What do I mean by that? Well, simply because some folks could misconstrue the intention of Christian disciplines and think, okay, it's a self-improvement course. No, that's not what it's about. You see, God gives life, and folks, please listen to this. To the Christian born of God and filled of the Spirit, the question is not right and wrong anymore. It's not like, hey, I need to have the rules. What is right, what is wrong? To the Christian born of the Spirit, the question is, what maintains the life given of the Spirit and what grieves away the life of the Spirit? We walk by the life of the Spirit. Because quite frankly, folks, for everything in your life, there are not a set of rules in the Bible to guide you, but there's the Spirit of life. And that which maintains the presence and the life, that is what I pursue. Okay. And so these disciplines are not principles of self-optimization, but they are principles to maintain the life given. Not to earn it, okay? They are means of grace and apprenticeship practice. And what will they do? They will create the space for God to change me, to transform me, to live and have my being in Him, and to let Him live through me. Folks, I cannot overemphasize to you how important this is. I find many Christians, quite frankly, very lazy. Very lazy. We have fallen into this spurious logic of information equals transformation. We live in a world where we consume. We're part of the consumer culture. I just consume more info. Oh, it's nice. I get a goosebump. Oh, it's true. Yes, I agree. It means nothing until you start to practice the basics. You know, I shared with you a few years ago the insight of an agricultural specialist around the trees that we are planting on the farm. I had the guy there and he looked at the olive trees and he said, look man, forget the fruit. Forget the fruit. I said, what? I was really insulted. I mean, I was really proud of the fruit. They said, I'll tell you what you need to do. Don't focus on anything else. Focus on the roots. Stick to the roots. And do the same thing over and over again to the roots, and the rest will look after itself. And we tend to forget that as Christians. We want to be somewhere there, but we don't practice the basics. You know, it's the small things that create the big things. And so we see the following. Christian disciplines are how the church participates in the life of Christ, not how she purchases it. It's a participation. You see, the Lord gave us a way and a means to participate in the life. He gives the life, and now we need to maintain, we need to abide in that life. We need to maintain that relationship. And these principles are given to do exactly that. You see, it is also unfortunately true that many people don't miss what they never had. If it's just a meritorious work, then it's going to be empty. If it's some type of self-improvement, it's going to mean nothing. Okay? It's not some philosophical concept. But if the focus is on the life, it means you've got to have it before you can maintain it. And that would confront us to turn back to the Lord and seek His presence. So it's a way that we participate in that life. And this participation, this practice, train desire, perception, and attention so that grace can have its full work within us. Folks, I can tell you now, the reason why so many Christians are never changed, it's because they're spectator Christians. They like to hear the truth. They are very content with the shadows because the substance is just going to ask too much of them. You know, isn't it interesting that in our society at large, people love to idolize heroes. Sadly, in this country that we live in, people idolize men who inject themselves with steroids, train very hard, and chase a leather ball. Somehow that's a sort of an idol. But to their credit, some of these guys work really, really hard. They sweat it out. They have real gifting. And those who sit on the side look at it and adore them and idolize them. And there's something in that we need to question. You see, we love to idolize those who basically didn't give up when we would have given up. Oh, it's so amazing. How did you do that? Well, you see, when the others quit, I just carried on. You see, when the others came to a stop, I just put the pedal. We have some high value and we give adoration to those who have disciplined themselves in their sport, in my example, to such an extent that they achieved the highest goal. And we think that's wonderful because they are doing something that you're not willing to do. Man, they're up 5 o'clock in the morning. They train 8 hours a day. I mean, they keep on kicking that leather thing over and over again until they get it right. And coincidentally, they are not necessarily all people with supernatural gifts. They're just people who are willing to carry on so many times until they succeed where most would have given up. And we think it's wonderful. They have discipline. Isn't it true? And we adore that in the world. And then we get to our Christianity and we see some excel in the Lord. Some grow mighty in the Lord. Some do great things for the Lord. And we think, well, they must be specially gifted. Or are they just ordinary people who day to day use the foundation stones of the principles of the Lord and they practice it faithfully in small things until it becomes something substantial in the kingdom? See, somehow Christians think that spirituality comes by osmosis. You don't need to practice anything. You don't need to be faithful in anything. You don't need to be disciplined in anything. All you need is the dominee doctor at the end of the week to give you your pills so that you treat your symptoms. You don't need to change. And if something goes wrong, it's the dominee's fault. Now, he's not giving you the right medicine. It's like most of us do, right? If you don't get the result, you blame the doctor. The culprit's in the mirror. And we need to take responsibility. We're looking at the Christian survival kit. Let's go further. Practice of Christian discipline do not produce life. They support the life given. I can't reiterate this too much. Okay? God gives disciplines for all believers to follow that will preserve spiritual vitality. Those things are not given for nothing. They're not optional extras. Please sign here if you want to do this, then do it. You see, there's a real world in which we live that contends against the things of God. Well, I explained to you previously, we've got the world around us, the flesh within us, and the enemy against us. Not exactly a walk in the park. And if I am not a disciplined follower of Christ, I will not survive. You know, folks, those that are in ministry with me will tell you that when you look at statistics in the church, nowadays it's even worse. You are very lucky if you have 10% of the attendance in the church active in the church. The rest are like dead weight. You have to carry them. They come there so that you carry them. And that's why so many ministers that I know get so tired. Because most Christians have never heard of work out your own salvation in fear and trembling. No, they have outsourced that to the preacher. Practice of Christian disciplines do not produce life. As I said to you, it supports it. God gives disciplines for all believers to follow. It's not an optional extra. A rule of life, or this principle, is a crafted pattern of time, place, and relationship that keeps focus and dependence on Jesus. It's something that I do. It's just so hard to get up. Why don't you tell that to people who have an ambition to achieve something in life? Isn't it interesting that as far as your Christianity is concerned, things are just too much of a sacrifice, but as far as your worldly success is concerned, you'll do anything? Isn't that interesting? I mean, that speaks to your priorities, right? Once we have the eye fixed on Jesus and we have Him central every day, guess what? Everything else changes in its dimension and its understanding, as far as I'm concerned, because now I'm in the Lord and I'm viewing things from the Lord's perspective. But if I'm not in Him, if I'm not maintaining that relationship, things can become very overwhelming, and my Christianity then becomes a philosophy or a mere argument. Okay. So here's the thing, folks. The power of the Spirit meets man at the point where man chooses daily to walk in the disciplines of the Lord. That's where He waits for us. When we subdue the flesh, when we bring ourselves to a place where we prioritize reading the Word, where we prioritize prayer, where we prioritize the gathering together, where we prioritize a Sabbath rest for the Lord, where we set aside time. This now belongs to the Lord. That keeps the Lord central in our lives. So that's where He meets us. You know what they say? A man who owns a Bible that's falling apart, his life is normally not falling apart. A man who's praying. Have you ever seen Christians in a state of utter despair and weakness if they maintain the Christian disciplines? I've never seen it. You can take those guys through the worst. They just look at you because they're in the Lord and the Lord is in them. And they'll even be militant. They're not intimidated. I've never seen a Christian who practiced the disciplines that is feeble, weak, and overwhelmed. So folks, I submit to you that we have a problem. Too many Christians are on life support. Too many Christians want the pill to fix them. Too many Christians, they don't even take their pills regularly. Some of them, they'll take it once a month. Once a month church for me. It is a laughable situation. And the sad thing is, some of them only come once their wheels really come off. Then they want to make a deal with the Lord. Something wrong. So let me show you this, folks. When we talk about the Christian survival kit, Hebrews 12:11, all discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful. Have you ever tried discipline for fun? Man, it's not fun because you actually have to subdue your flesh. You actually have to take control. Your flesh doesn't tell you, hey, listen, buddy, I want to sleep in, or I want this and I want that. The flesh is about self-pleasing. Now you have to discipline not just the flesh, but the mind. So all discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful, but sorrowful. Yet to those who have been trained by it, do you see the word there, trained by it? It means it's continuing. Afterwards, it yields a peaceful fruit of righteousness. Peaceful fruit of righteousness. Now look at this. It's a Greek word that means the whole training and education of children. It also includes training and care of the body. Interesting. Further, whatever in adults also cultivates the soul, especially by correcting mistakes and curbing passions. Did you know that's discipline? It's like, no, you can't have it. Okay? It's not about pleasing yourself. It's not about getting what you want all the time. Most Christians, folks, are so deeply ingrained in self-pleasure that they can't even see that it's wrong. It's just natural. It's like breathing. Do you feel guilty about breathing? You see, those are intellectual, philosophical Christians, but their practices is around themselves. No, conscience about being number one in your own world. And then you wonder why you are spiritually poor and spiritually weak. You see, the Bible says the flesh fights against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh. You can't do what you will. It has to be subdued. It has to be disciplined. And discipline is that one thing we don't like. I know very few people who love to train. Are you telling me I must overcome all the body ache? Do you know how hard it is? Yeah, but all the benefits. I'll change and train when my misery factor, exceeds my pain factor. I must be miserable enough, then I'll do something about it. Well, maybe then it's too late. Okay, so here's the point. This training, this discipline is instruction which aims at increasing virtue. So it's instruction. It's subduing the body. It's cultivating the soul. And it's even chastenings. Chastenings. Not a word we like, right? Hey, look, man, we're all grown-ups. I mean, I don't need all of this kid stuff, you know. I'm a grown-up. Well, that's exactly the problem. Maybe you've grown up wrong. You need discipline. Folks, listen. Again, there's no way that a Christian can survive as a real Christian without the practicing of these disciplines. How do we maintain our spirituality, the life given? How do we thrive? How do we even go forward for the kingdom without daily practice of Christian discipline? Again, a lot of Christians love to be entertained, especially around eschatology. Oh, let's have an argy-bargy about eschatology. You know what is my observation? Intellectualism, a lot of talk, a lot of argument even, a lot of carnality when they disagree with you. No fruit. You know why there's no fruit? No practice of Christian disciplines. Do you think your Father will leave you to be a carnal slob and be who you are if you sit in His presence daily, if you seek Him in His Word? Do you think His Word will not wash you? Do you think His Spirit will not convict you? So folks, the evidence that we see, the carnality, the type of divisive Christianity that flourishes in our day is evidence that people are not walking in the disciplines of the Lord. Now, let's just look at them quickly. I mean, I haven't got everything in here. I've actually added on another list one more. What are these things that I'm talking about? What is it that makes us survive as Christians? What is it that maintains the life? Well, it starts, of course, with abiding in the Word. I'm not going to discuss this today. This will come in other lectures going forward. I just want to make the point. So which are these principles? I'll show you how amazing they are and how they actually work. So they are abiding in the Word, prayer and intercession, walking in the Spirit, fellowship. I don't like that. I don't like people, you know. I like to stay in my own little corner. Fellowship. Very important. Iron sharpens iron. Obedience to the leading of the Spirit and the Word. Endurance under trial. Worship and thanksgiving. Proclamation of the truth and witnessing testimony. Giving of self and giving of resources. Now, folks, the one that I didn't add here that I did in the other list is the keeping of a day of rest. Just to get out of the system, just to get into a place where I put my focus again on the Lord and let the world get quiet around me. These things are not the things that we maintain. These things maintain us. And we need to understand that. How many Christians do I know that study the Word, not read it, study the Word, pray, walk in the Spirit, have fellowship with other Christians, live in obedience as far as the truth is revealed to them, endure faithfully? I mean, we're literally talking angels here, aren't we? Wouldn't it be nice to be a Christian like that, or even know somebody like that? You see, folks, we majored in minors and we failed the fundamentals. It makes no sense to carry on if we do not make our lives comply to the truth we already know. Doesn't make sense. It's the practicing of the truth, not the knowing of doctrines. And so real Christianity boils down to this. We get this in place and we repeat it. Even small steps every day. We're going to grow. Things can happen. We're laying the foundation. Now, look at this. The one thing you can't fool yourself with is to say, well, at least you've got 10 there, buddy. I've got 3. You see, that's where the deception starts. The Christian disciplines are not competing practices but complementary graces. They are interdependent. They work together, and I'm going to show you that just now. Their interaction produces balance, depth, and power. So in other words, you read the Bible, and you pray, and you obey, and you walk in the Spirit all together. You can't say, hey, listen, man, today I've practiced the Christian disciplines. My survival kit, I read 2 verses. You see, the Word stirs faith. That Word stirs me to pray. Prayer helps me further to see. Prayer centers my focus on the Lord. Prayer makes me sensitive to the Lord, makes me sensitive to the Spirit, and the Word and the Spirit together brings me to a place of conviction where I need to obey and do something. And from there, things start to flow. I can't just practice one thing. Now, folks, we need to see how important these things are. They're part of a real Christian life. They're integrated, they're interdependent. Just as a strand woven together form an unbreakable cord, so the disciplines remaining in the word, prayer, worship, and so forth, strengthen one another. They strengthen one another. Have you ever tried praying before you read the Bible? Because it's the only book where the author is always present when you read it. You can actually ask him, Lord, help me, I don't understand. Open your word to me. You pray, you read, you pray some more, you obey, you start to walk. Now, let me show you something very interesting. Neglect of one discipline weakens the whole. For example, prayer without the word drifts into subjectivity. It becomes my opinion, right? Study without prayer becomes sterile intellectualism. Service without worship turns into activism. Oh, I'm doing something. Why? The motive has changed. It's not focused on the Lord anymore. It's some human action. Fellowship without solitude, waiting on the Lord first, loses depth and sensitivity. So all of these things are interdependent. The Lord has given it to us to maintain life. The crudest way I can use it, the example is it's like servicing a car. You've got to go back to the manual. How do I maintain this thing? How do I actually get it to give me service? How do I go the distance? Well, there are certain practical things you have to do regularly. And so the Lord could speak to us loud and clear when that engine seizes and we don't get that we had to maintain the thing. And we wonder, okay, I wonder what I must do with my spiritual life. Please don't wait till your engine seizes. It's not going to be a nice thing. Anyway, let me go further. Show you some interaction. These things are interdependent. I can't isolate them. Oh, I've prayed today. No, that's not the end of your discipline in your Christian walk. So prayer and scripture are inseparable. Okay? So the word directs us to prayer. Worship and the word are inseparable. Worship springs from truth. The revealing in the scriptures, that stirs us to worship. It's part of our Christian practice. How many of you worship the Lord in your inner room? You read the word, you pray, you read the word, and the response is awe and worship. Those are practices of a Christian, and those are the things that maintain the life. Okay? Further, fellowship and accountability. No, I don't know that. Oh, excuse me. That's one thing I don't like. I'll do it on my own. I'll have my Sonata Christianity. I'll do it my way. Well, unfortunately not. Fellowship's important. Even with those people you don't like. They are just so brutally honest and you don't like it. Well, it's not an option. The Lord uses iron to sharpen iron. Service and giving. Well, at least I've got to deal with the Lord, Like I had a businessman tell me once, he said, look, I've got to deal with the Lord. I'll give money to his work and I stay out of church. It's like, hey, I didn't, you could cut deals with the Lord. As far as I know, everything belongs to him. You're just privileged to keep a little bit for yourself. Well, so service and giving. And by the way, why don't you give yourself first? You think you can buy yourself off by giving something and not giving yourself? Self-deceived. So service is the outflow of worship and prayer. Guys, I want you to see how these things interact one with the other, complement one the other. So you worship, you pray, you read the Bible, you serve out of thanksgiving, you're in fellowship and you start to serve because that word is changing you all the while. And all the while you do these things, the Lord is there. The life that He gave is there, and your spirituality is maintained. I'm astonished to see how many Christians think they can survive without practicing the Christian disciplines. Who think they can survive on an intellectual conviction or a momentum event that will give them a goosebump or a nice song that will stir them emotionally. That's not Christianity, man. That is self-deception. And then there's the discipline of perseverance that overarches all of these. You have to persevere in every one of these to see the result. Okay, so folks, to make it easier for you, I want to show you how amazing the Lord designed the disciplines. There are basically two pillars. Okay, so this survival kit contains abstinence and engagement. It's just so logical. I leave certain things that would keep me attached to the world, keep me attached to the flesh, and feed my self-life. And I turn away from that and I cling to new principles. But I guess this is where the problem comes in, right? We want the best of both worlds. But folks, here is what you got to remember. If you think you're going to have the best of both, you'll have the worst of both. You've got to come to an understanding. It's leaving and cleaving. I come out of something to lay a hold of something else. You can't sit with hands on both. Okay? And so it's abstinence, leaving one thing and clinging to another. This is what the disciplines comes down to. So abstinence frees desire from disordered attachment. So there are certain things we do practically, and this is what we'll describe in the next lessons. But there are certain things I leave. There are certain things as the Spirit convicts. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to expose myself to it. For other people, it might not be wrong, but for me, I don't want to grieve the Spirit. I don't want to be exposed to things like that. Further, engagement in certain principles reorder desire towards love of God and neighbors and living in the power of God. So let's just separate, number one, the two pillars there. Further, the Lord designed it in a way so that we could fulfill the greatest commandment. What's the great commandment, Lord? The greatest commandment? What is it? Love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself. And I want to show you something astonishing. So we looked at the disciplines. Folks, look at this. It's so amazing. The moment I start to practice the disciplines, on the one side, I'm expressing that love towards God, and on the other side, I'm expressing that love towards my neighbor. Look at it. So abiding in the word, hearing, reading, meditating, obeying the scripture is love towards God. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. If you abide in my word. If you abide in my word, you're truly my disciples. Okay, there we go. Abiding in the word. Next point. Prayer and intercession is service towards God. I love the Lord. I pray. I speak to Him. I express my dependence on Him, and His communion with God. Worship and thanksgiving is service towards the Lord. Okay? Walking in the Spirit, service towards the Lord. Obedience and holiness, service towards the Lord. And endurance in trial is faithfulness towards the Lord. So what is the first commandment? I've got to love the Lord my God with all my heart, all my soul. And what is the Christian survival kit doing for me? Well, the disciplines on the first instance is bringing me into a right relationship with the Lord. I love Him when I do these things. Now let's look at the other side of it. Well, on the other side, there's service towards man, because the second great commandment is you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. Let's see how practical Christianity really is when it comes to the disciplines. Well, part of the Christian disciplines is fellowship and mutual edification. I love fellow believers. We love to talk about the Lord. We edify one another, encourage one another. We walk with one another. We're not going to leave you behind. That's love towards man. Further, proclamation and witness, love towards man. Further, giving of resources and self, love towards man. The Lord doesn't need it, but people needs it. Okay? Further, we service, justice, and mercy. What are we doing? It's love towards man. When we act towards them in justice and mercy and serve them. Love towards man. Further, confession and forgiveness. I bring things to the light and I forgive. Love towards man. Further, hospitality. Okay, in submission to one another. Love towards man. So the disciplines that the Lord gave us to maintain life are by default designed to fulfill the great commandments. Love the Lord, love your neighbor. When I practice them, relationship is maintained. In the first instance, relationship is maintained towards the Lord, life is maintained, and the second instance, life towards the church. Folks, you know what? We look at these things and we think, if people would only do it, think how wonderful the church would be. I could actually go to church and people won't gossip. Yes, because God won't allow you. He won't allow you to do whatever your perverted flesh wants to do. On the one side, we have service towards Him. There He deals with us. And once He's dealt with us, we can stand before men. And we can serve one another. And we fulfill His plan by keeping the Christian disciplines. Now, another thing that is the upside of practicing the disciplines, something very basic. Look at this. The external disciplines produces an internal heart's disposition. It shapes us while we're doing it. And you didn't know that, did you? Look at it. So prayer changes us, and we started to become more God conscious, and we start to be more sensitive to the Spirit. Fasting changes us. We focus on the Lord. Guess what? It brings us into a deeper dependence and a place of trust. Worship, we give God the credit and the reverence for who He is. And what does that induce within us? A desire to be holy and to want to obey Him. Scripture reading and study. The more you know, the less you know. The more you study, the more you realize how little you truly know. And He brings us into a place of humility. Giving, okay, we're giving and we give of ourselves and of our substance. Guess what? The more I do that, the more the corresponding internal work of love for God and love for neighbor is shaped. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of that. What is the point I'm trying to show you? The practice of the Christian disciplines is everything. It's foundational. Not acquiring doctrines, folks. Not trying to get clever in eschatology. To be true, you see, I've got a little bit of a bone to pick around this, because everybody's going on around, hey, rapture next week, listen, this and that. Everybody's so clever, but they don't practice Christianity. And just go argue with them. Man, they'll tell you you're of the devil or of the last day's deception. They have no fruit. Nothing. Why don't you get busy? If it's really what you say it is, why aren't you on the streets weeping for souls and telling people about Jesus? Okay? So here's the point. You get the foundational principles in place and you practice them faithfully. You know, I like to train. I'm a little bit addicted. It's never easy to get up when it's cold. We live in the Cape. It's never easy to get my cycling clothes on when it's raining and there's snow on the mountain. But it's so fun once you're out there. But it's overcoming that initial resistance. Am I going to do it? And you hear your bed calling your name. Louis, I love you long time. Stay with me. And your flesh goes, yes, we love you back. You know? It's never easy, but it's a decision you make. Because you are not looking at what you want now, but where you want to be. And so we see that the Christian disciplines fulfills the great commandment to love God and to love our neighbor. And we see as we practice these disciplines, it's shaping something within us, and we're not even conscious of it. None of these things I can produce out of my own strength, but as I obediently, consistently practice in small things every day where nobody sees, things are changing. Things are changing. Okay? And so we find another benefit of the disciplines. Folks, you must see this. Is amazing. So what I did, I made a list of all the principles of opposition that comes against us in the world. And then I go to the disciplines and see, my golly, it's really the antidote for it. Look, for example, and I don't have time to go through everything, but it's just the principle that I want to convey. Every single one of these Christian disciplines has a force against that which is in the world. Okay? So, for example, reading and studying the scriptures, it narrates reality, because the world's filled with this metaverse, fake news, fake reality, all nonsense. But the word re-narrates and rewrites the script for you. It trains the conscience and it renews the mind. So it counters relativism, false ideologies, and information overload. You get out of that system, you get into the truth. You get into the word, and the mind goes, oh, okay, now I've got perspective. And so we get into prayer, for example. It shifts the focus from self to God, and it aligns with His will. Okay? And it counters anxiety, spiritual laziness, and self-sufficiency. You see, every time I practice the Christian disciplines, it deals with something of the old man and the world in which I'm functioning. Okay, Sabbath is the one I've added. Okay, it declares literally times belong to the Lord. You know, folks, I must just say this, please. Started way back in 1989 with ministry, and so I had the privilege to see many people come and go, and I've seen parents making compromises for their children. Now, I'm not a Sabbath keeper in the sense of, hey, you got to keep the Sabbath as a specific day. But I'm very much about having that day dedicated to the Lord. Okay? And so, I'm not a Sabbath keeper in the religious sense of the word, but the principle is so important. So these parents taught their children, hey, listen, man, the world's changed. You know, you have all your sports events on a Sunday. I want these parents, your children are going to go astray. You know, but you know, it's for their future. You know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Okay, good luck and goodbye. Because what was the end result years down the line? I don't understand it. I trained my children in the way of the Lord. No, you didn't, you liar. You taught them that God is not important. You taught them to change their priorities. You taught them. And now they're doing what you taught them. It's a Christian discipline. So having that day set aside says, I'm not going to do what I normally do. The world is doing that. Why should I go? I mean, one of the biggest things I detest on a day dedicated to the Lord is for sports activities and all these things. I detest that. Why? Because it says something of the attitude of the person. Today I'm dedicated to the Lord. Today I set aside time to focus on the Lord, to have my priorities reorganized again. I study the Word, because most people don't do it anyways during the week. Now look, I'm just telling you my personal stand. I'm not condemning anybody that disagrees with that. But for me, it's fundamental to why Christianity is falling apart. Further, fasting and simplicity. So it reorders and exposes hidden idols and frees resources for generosity. Fasting and simplicity. Can you believe it? What does it counter? Consumerism, lust, envy, and compulsion. We don't live disciplined lives, folks. You have an urge, you scratch it. That's how people live. They don't even think 1 second about it. And slowly the flesh creeps in, and you wonder why your Christianity is weak and feeble and dying. You see, the follower of Christ is a disciplined follower. Paul says, I'm buffeting my body. I don't let it do what it wants. It's subdued to the principles of the Word and the Spirit. And so we can carry on, and we look at how every single one of these disciplines counters an appeal of the world, the flesh, and the devil on us. And then what you'll notice, I've added number 11, digital fasting. So it reclaims attention for love of God and others. It counters distraction, comparison, addictive media, and lust. So most people don't have the discipline. They will just entertain themselves with anything that pops up. Okay? And guess what? Dedication to the Lord suffers. I want to now show you something about disciplines. I'm not dealing with the disciplines in detail today. What I'm showing you is that the fundamentals of the Christian disciplines is the Christian survival kit. It speaks to everything your spirit needs to live and thrive in this world. The evidence that we see in Christianity today is that most of them are on life support, outsourcing their spiritual life to somebody else who's actually alive. And this is not the way that Christianity will ever advance the purposes of the kingdom. Every Christian needs to take responsibility and work out his own salvation in fear and trembling. But I want to leave you with a few thoughts on discipline. Discipline is the difference between what you want now and what you want most. I want to make it very clear. If you want to grow up in the Lord and be strong in the purposes of the Lord, it means that what you want now is going to suffer. It's going to come to an end. It's going to be subdued for the purpose of what you want most in the Lord. And then we can say for those who are the procrastinators and who swim in the shallow waters of mediocrity, excuses are the nails used to build the house of failure. We're filled with excuses. Well, I don't want to be like them. We got everybody else to blame and everything else to blame. Okay? And so what you can expect with certainty is failure. Am I saying, guys, that your spiritual life depends on you? It's exactly what I'm saying. It's not just going to happen by osmosis. Maybe your spiritual life will hang by a thread by the day you get to the Lord, because by His grace He's carried you through many things, but you are not going to thrive or grow or express the power of the kingdom without active participation. Most people, therefore, do not lack strength. It's not a question of willpower. They actually lack will. Because it's just too costly to be disciplined. It's just too costly to be faithful every day. Every day, read, pray, be sensitive to the Spirit, walk in obedience as far as I can, worship the Lord every day, meticulously, small steps. It's just too costly. You see, the world has its demands, right? I have priorities. I'm a little bit busy, Lord. I'll fit you in sometime later. Listen to this. The successful person, and I mean successful in spiritual things, has the habit of doing what the failing person does not like to do. Do we have certain Christians excel spiritually because they are supernaturally spiritually gifted? Or are they people that fail just as much as everybody else? But to them the issue in life is not failing, but getting up and being consistent and persistent, so that the practice of the principles that the Lord has given for the maintaining of life is finally established in them and the Lord can use them. Why is it that some stay babies and others grow up? Why is it that some are on the way and others are in the way? It's because the lack of Christian disciplines, the lack of faithfulness in small things. Okay? You will never change your life until you change something you do daily. You can't keep on doing the same thing expecting a different result, right? Your life will never change unless you start at least study the word and pray. And what you'll find is that from there, in your faithfulness, the Spirit will meet you at the point where He gave you the instruction to do something. That's where He waits. Not there outside where you do nothing. Now, so the price of spiritual excellence is discipline. The cost of mediocrity is disappointment. I think some of you can agree with me that there's nothing that wears you out as much as people who never get out of it. They're always the victim. They're always pleading helplessness. They're always in a state of despair. And they never change. Why don't they ever change? Because the Christianity is a philosophical idea and not a daily practice. And that's why, folks, again, I cannot overemphasize to you how important it is to have the Christian survival kit and to do something. The Lord Jesus said, why is it that you call me Lord, Lord, but you do not do? You see, the lie is, well, if I do, then it's a work. No, it's not. I don't work to get saved. I work because I am saved. I don't do this to get the life. I do this to maintain the life. Okay? So laziness erodes discipline faster than failure ever could. It's okay if you fail, but just don't give up. The issue in life is not falling, but getting up. The issue in life is not failing, but continuing. You get up and you keep on. Listen, if you walk away from the Lord, you can only walk towards darkness, right? So, I mean, how long do you want to walk away from Him? Just turn around and get right back into it. And keep on. And keep on. And what you'll find, and I can testify to this in my own life, folks, that you carry on and you're just disciplined and you wonder, but Lord, I long for that life. I long for that power of your Spirit. And as you are faithful, you just find the Lord starting to work. You start to find the reality of the Spirit starting to work because you're faithful. And the Lord sees that, and the Lord rewards that, and His presence is there. Okay? Again, laziness erodes discipline faster than failure ever could. We are our own great enemy because we allow our flesh and our impulses and our selfishness to dictate for us. So procrastination makes easy things hard and hard things harder. Think about that. I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow the load's bigger. I'll do it the day after that. Just a little bit more rest, and I'll get into it seriously. Listen, you start now. Even if you don't know how to exactly, at least start, and you can grow in it. And if you don't know how, then you can learn. But you have to start first. Okay? And so, folks, what we are saying to one another is that the reason why Christianity is on life support is because Christianity is not practiced. And it's not practiced at its fundamentals. You cannot expect to walk in the Spirit without the word of truth, which is the sword of the Spirit. You cannot expect to walk in the Spirit without prayer. You cannot expect to obey what you don't know and whom you don't know. The disciplines were given to maintain us in this world and to help us to remain faithful to the end. But we have to be faithful in it. You see, part of the understanding of the Hebrew word faith is not just trust in God, but corresponding faithfulness because we trust. Okay? Corresponding faithfulness. We focus on His character and we trust, and in response we are faithful. And what does that mean? We pray because He is. We read His word because He speaks. We obey because He leads. We worship because He's worthy. And we carry on in this day by day. Folks, I guarantee you, if you practice the disciplines faithfully on a daily basis, you will not be overwhelmed or caught by surprise or taken aback by the world and the spirit of this world. It's what we need. We don't need to necessarily grow in deep understandings as much as we need to grow in our faithfulness to the Word of God. Faithfulness to that which He has given us to maintain our love for Him and our love for our neighbor. And so I want to end off with this verse this morning, Philippians 2:12. Therefore, my dear ones, as you have always obeyed. So now, not only in my presence, but much more because I'm absent. Listen to this. Work out. Look at the word in brackets. Cultivate. Cultivate. Carry out to the goal and fully complete your own salvation with reverence and awe and trembling. Watchfulness against temptation. Timidity. Shrinking from whatever might offend God and discredit the name of Christ. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Yes, folks, you do have a part to play. You cannot sit idly. You cannot expect for God to do for you what He expects of you. You cannot expect God to do for you by just a prayer, a quick prayer, what you are supposed to do by daily practice. We have a responsibility and a response to God. We have an obligation as Christians, and we have to practice. No, it's not a work. I don't work to get saved. I work because I am saved. And by their fruit you will know them. I pray to God that you'll be encouraged by this and that you'll be urged to look at the disciplines. I'm definitely going to do the rest of them in detail, but not for the Sunday service. I'll do it as an extra lesson. Please have a look at it. The purpose for today was to draw your attention to the fact that the church is spiritually anemic, not because of God's, because it's God's responsibility, because the lack of taking responsibility by Christians. Amen.